Good morning. This is SM350 Facility Operations and Event Management, and I am your host for the semester, Professor Rivera. So let's jump in. So, while some of you guys have had me for online asynchronous classes before, many of you guys have not. So, this lecture is going to be a little bit of an introduction, not only an introduction for the class, what to expect, but an introduction for our format, and a little introduction on myself so you guys can get to know me. Every lecture will, or every week, the lectures should be delivered in a similar format. Most of them will be delivered where we start with a chapter. I start with an overview or objectives for that chapter, and then we get into it. So this lecture is very similar, right? What should you expect? Well, I'm going to give you a little introduction. We're going to talk about the syllabus today. I'm going to talk about goals for the semester, both for myself and goals that you guys should start thinking about. And then I will always finish with weekly deliverables. Now, the weekly deliverables might not always be in the lecture. Sometimes I will just send them in the announcements. So pay attention to those on a weekly basis. So let's just start with introduction. Before I go into the class introduction, let me talk a little bit about these lectures. Most of my lectures, my goal is to keep them under 30 minutes. I do think most of them tend to be about 20 to 25 minutes. I have found in the past, if I go above 25 to 30 minutes, I really start to lose you guys as students, and understandably so. If you're just listening to me rant for 30 minutes, I think that can be a bit boring and tedious for you guys. Other things, these lectures. Right now, I'm recording this. It's January 21st, 2023. Some of my lectures will have been pre-recorded. Now, all of the lectures, I will always watch them, and I'm trying to edit them and trying to make them a little bit better every semester, always trying to include recent relevant events. But if there's a point where I say something in a lecture and it doesn't really seem relevant, or you're confused about it, it could be from it's an old lecture and I missed the edit. But if you're ever confused, just shoot me an email. But I should address all of it. So what should we expect? I mean, it's facility and event management. So what does facility and event management entail? A massive part of what we're doing this semester is simply planning. You know, if you run a reoccurring annual event, whether it's something as small as a weekend 5K with like 50 runners, or something as massive as the Olympics or the Super Bowl, all of them require certain levels of planning. Some can be a few weeks of planning. Others, like the Super Bowl, are going to be years of planning. Okay. Um, Part of this plan is going to include delegation of responsibilities. One of the major parts of the plans where we talk about for, I believe, multiple chapters is financing, budgeting, and revenue. This is something I think you guys should pay particular attention to. This is something that in my own experience of running a facility and running reoccurring events that I think I've struggled early on. I've done a better job recently. And you know, I'm always going to try to give you guys some insight into my past experiences with these things because I think it's kind of helpful. Another part of the semester that we'll talk about are unforeseen issues with running a facility or running a specific event. It could range from things like inclement weather. If you're running a weekend 5K, what are your plans if it rains? Do you keep the event on? What if it's thunder? What if it's snowing? Do you have a rain date? Right? Macroeconomic shifts. Again, it is January 21st, 2023. I could tell you guys right now, January 21st of 2022, the macroeconomic landscape in the world, in the business, in the economy was very different than it currently is. 1 year ago, the stock market, the tech sector, things were doing incredibly well. Cryptocurrencies were through the roof. I know a lot of young kids like to get into cryptocurrencies. Fast forward 1 year later, well, You know, the tech sector is down 60 to 70% across the board. Cryptocurrency is down across the board. Inflation has went through the roof. It has decreased families' purchasing powers to spend money on certain things. All right, so this is something as a facility manager or a special event manager that you have to take into consideration. And here's just an obvious one, right? You can never plan for everything, but you should have emergency plans in place. As the world found out 2 years ago with COVID-19, we always have to be very agile in our current plan because things can change pretty quick. So that's a little bit about the class and some of the topics you guys can expect to see from the class. Personal introduction. Most of you guys know me, so I'm not going to spend too much time with this stuff. I'm currently finishing my PhD at Seton Hall University, studying health science, but very specifically, I am looking at barbell-based movements and implementing an optimal training program to maximize muscular strength and hypertrophy. But the more relevant things for this class are the fact that I own a small performance training facility in Stony Point, New York. I have owned my facility for 9 years now, and I will reference my training facility many times throughout the semester because, again, I think it serves as a good tool to aid a lot of our discussions. I've got a lot of experience with budgeting and finance of that facility. In addition to that, I am a track and field coach. Our track and field team runs I believe it's the third largest track and field invitational in New York State. And that event attracts over 1,500 athletes, 50 teams from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and several other states. So that's a major, major event that requires a lot of planning. So I'll oftentimes talk about our event called Red Raider Relays. We host that every April. And this is my third semester at St. Peter's University. I'm very happy here as a Peacock, but prior to St. Peter's, I worked as an adjunct professor at Mercy College and Brooklyn College. So let's talk a little bit about goals for the semester. Once again, some of these are for me personally working with you guys, but some of this should be for you guys taking this class or just in school. So number one is just simply progress. I know many of you guys and I kind of know your current backgrounds. Nothing gets me more excited than seeing a student come from one starting point and seeing their work improve throughout the semester. So you guys are going to have things like case studies. I'm not going to see much improvement in terms of quizzes. Well, hopefully you guys are doing well on those off the bat, but a lot of things are just writing and critical thinking skills. I want to see that progress. So part of my teaching philosophy is to enhance and or develop critical thinking. So what is critical thinking? In my eyes, critical thinking is something that's going to aid what we would call an independent learner. I think when you get out into the real world, many times you are going to be tasked with something you are completely unfamiliar with. And what are you going to do? I mean, you can't just go to a boss and say, I have no idea what to do. It is going to be your job to identify the problem and figure out a potential solution. And I think being an independent learner and enhancing critical thinking is incredibly important in the workplace. So that's a major goal for me to enhance in you guys. So refine the remote learning approach. So this is something on both sides, right? I've been teaching online asynchronous since the pandemic started. I know online asynchronous classes can be boring at times. I hope you guys take a lot out of this. But I do have some tips for you guys that I always tell my online asynchronous classes. One would be really set aside some quiet time to read and watch these lectures. So don't be in a room with other people. Set aside some time, whether it's in the library or a quiet room. Put your phone away. That's a major one. Put your phone in another room or put it in airplane mode so you're not distracted. Another helpful tip that actually students have told me in the past is breaking these lectures up. So even for like a 25-minute lecture, it can be beneficial to break the lecture up into maybe like 2 separate viewings. For whatever reason, our attention span isn't always great, so just 2 separate viewings, 15 minutes one time, maybe 15 to another 20 minutes another time. I think that can be helpful. And then lastly, would it be for me to respond to all of your emails in a timely manner. I did a better job last semester of that. So what is a timely manner? For simple questions, my goal is 24 hours. Sometimes you guys have questions that are not simple. So typically I'm looking for like 72 hours if I have to reach out to somebody. What I tell students is if I haven't got back to you at all in 3 to 4 days, don't be afraid to shoot me another email. You're never bothering me, especially in an online asynchronous class. Communication is incredibly important. So always, always, always reach back out to me. Return assignments in a timely manner. This is something I openly or admittedly haven't been great with, especially with asynchronous classes. So my goal for you guys is to return your assignments within 2 weeks at the most, but usually a week is my goal now. All right. Same thing, if you guys haven't got your assignment graded within 2 weeks, don't be afraid to shoot me an email. So just some information. My email, super important for communication. Your text, you need your text. You're going to have to do a lot of reading. We're going to have case studies from the textbook. So the textbook is absolutely mandatory. When I'm giving my lectures are summarizing the chapter. I'm going to highlight some of the major talking points. I don't go over the entire chapter through these lectures. So it's your responsibility to read. You might be tasked with a case study that doesn't involve me discussing it within the active lecture. You're going to have read about it. Okay, so like if I ever put like a critique in a comment saying like, oh, what about this? You shouldn't come back to me and say, hey, professor, you didn't discuss this in your lecture. It's still part of your assigned readings. Okay. Now, if you're confused about something, again, shoot me an email and then we could talk about it. Now, grading for the semester. So this is the important stuff, right? You're going to have textbook assignments, right? You're going to have Edpuzzle lectures. So those of you that haven't taken me before, what happens is I'm going to deliver these Edpuzzle lectures once a week on the platform Edpuzzle. At the end, sometimes in the middle, but usually at the end, there will be several questions about the aforementioned lecture. Usually the questions are like 5, upwards of 10 questions. They're multiple choice and or true false. I try to be as simple and straightforward as possible. And that's pretty much it. Make sure you're staying up to date with these. In an online asynchronous class, it's very easy to get behind on these things. So make sure you're watching these every single week. Again, I do advise you always to read the chapter first and then watch the Edpuzzle lecture. Okay. Not every week, but certain weeks I will give you case studies on the chapters. Mostly on the chapters. There are a few assignments you're going to have to do that are outside of the textbook. And I mean, they're fun assignments, so don't worry too much about those. And then lastly is your final assignment for the semester. Your final assignment for the semester is essentially visiting a sports facility and taking pictures of the facility and then relating textbook concepts and how textbook concepts have been used within that facility. So like things like marketing, things like safety, all of those things, signage, you're going to have to kind of take pictures of at a sporting facility. I'm going to release this final assignment fairly early in the semester, and you guys could honestly get started on it as soon as I release it. Again, if you have questions about the assignment, feel free to let me know. But I'm going to release this earlier than usual. My plan is to release it in the next few weeks so you have all semester really to work on it. So Like I said, I'm going to have weekly deliverables. Usually it's 2 to 3 deliverables per week. The first deliverable is almost always going to be read the chapter, right? But other deliverables could be a textbook assignment. In this situation, because it's the first week, I got to get to know you guys. So on the discussion board, what I'd like you to do is introduce yourself. I don't know all of you guys, but also introduce yourself to your peers, right? What year are you in the program? Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? What's your area of study? I don't think all of you guys are sports management. I could be wrong on that. All right, but let me know. The other important stuff, right? What are your goals upon graduation, right? Let me know what you want to do for a career. What is your relationship to sports? It is a sports management program. It's a sports facility management class. So did you play sports in high school? Are you currently playing sports at St. Peter's? Do you just resistance train? You want to open up your own training center? Let me know what your relationship is to sports, right? And then finally, it's kind of this chalk question, but I do like to know it, and I do think it tends to shape a few of my lectures throughout the year. What are you most interested in learning about this semester? I mean, there's only, I think, 11 of you in this class. Well, if 8 of you want to learn about what it takes to run a gym, guess what? I'm going to change the direction of these lectures, right? But if I've got, I don't know, people in different places, maybe that want to learn more about what it takes to run an event like special events, maybe we'll talk more about Red Raider relays. I don't know. So let me know what you're interested in learning about, and that's pretty much it. As always, if you have questions, issues with purchasing your text online, let me know, and I'll get back to you quickly.